හරිම සුමුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9 this Tuesday, the 26th of September 2023. Rebranded. New law to be enacted to rebrand the Colombo port city as the Colombo Financial Zone, according to President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
The new legislation which will replace the port city to make it a Colombo Financial Zone with jurisdiction for offshore activity.
Pricing mechanics. Cost-reflective pricing must continue, insists Kanchana Vijayasekara. Budget 2024. Budget 2024 to be presented to Parliament by President Ranil Wickremesinghe on the 13th of November.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
This is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and a warm welcome to today's edition of AdaDerana's English News. First at 9. This is Jonathan Benedict. Let's take a look at our top story for this evening. After much discussion last week reported by AdaDerana regarding the legal identity of the port city, it seems a decision has now been made. President Ranil Wickremesinghe announced today that a new law would be introduced to rebrand the port city as the Colombo Financial Zone, along with the necessary legal provisions related to its activities, and will be implemented by the end of this year. Speaking at the 2023 Commercial Mediation Symposium held in Colombo, President Wickremesinghe said that the draft of the new law is being completed by Shearman and Sterling, a multinational law firm, and the new legislation will contain necessary legal arrangements governing maritime operations and will be granted jurisdiction over offshore activities.
The mediation is not a completely a novel thing for us. But in 1996, when the Arbitration Act was enacted, civil disputes where the monetary value is at present less than 1 million could be referred to mediation board. And if we see the latest reports, statistics, we are quite happy. Out of the disputes referred to mediation board, 70% cases are settled. In addition to that, we started another special mediation boards for the resolution of land disputes in the northern and eastern province, especially to address the grievances of the people who are affected by the war. We have seen the results. European Union is helping us.
We fail badly in dispute resolution, whether in the courts or elsewhere. And people remember that in business, time is money. You have to remember that and go ahead. Now we want Sri Lanka to be a center. One is the new legislation which will replace the port city to make it a Colombo Financial Zone with jurisdiction for offshore activity. The new law is being drafted by Shearman and Sterling, and we will see the light. It will see the light of day before end of the year. Secondly, is the BOI will be replaced with the Economic Commission. Because we will be entering a number of free trade agreements. We've got one with Singapore. We are about to finalize one with Thailand. We are discussing with India of upgrading agreement. Talk with Bangladesh, and more than that, we are moving to join the RCEP. That's the largest trading community in the world. And we have to ensure that Sri Lanka is a center. There is a vacuum in this part of the world for which Sri Lanka, if we move quickly, we can fill that vacuum.
The Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Vijayasekara, says that more opportunities will be granted to the Sinopec company to execute more dealerships and business in the country in the future. Speaking at the event launch of Sinopec's operations in the country, it was confirmed that the Chinese fuel company will operate through 150 fuel stations assigned by the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, adding further that 50 more fuel stations are slated to be established by Sinopec. Sinopec officially launched their retail fuel operations in Sri Lanka at an event held in Colombo last evening, marking a historic energy partnership. The event launch was organised under the patronage of the Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Vijayasekara, and China's ambassador to Sri Lanka, Shi Zhenhong. Further, representatives of 150 fuel stations across the island operating under the Sinopec umbrella also participated in the event.
签约后 我们分秒必争。
Sinopec is a company which can work with confidence, capability and essential competitiveness to ensure a sustainable and robust supply of oil to Sri Lanka. We are willing to share our knowledge and expertise to meet Sri Lankan market demand under local conditions. We possess an outstanding record in maintaining a stable supply of oil products internationally. We will ensure supply of the highest quality of the Sri Lankan market via numerous sources. Following this collaboration, the economic and social progress of Sri Lanka will gravitate towards a brighter future.
加油！谢谢大家。
We have pledged to provide a stable, sustainable, and high-quality oil supply. Over the past month, we anticipate completing this task and achieving full supply to each of our franchised filling stations by October. Our dealer partners with diverse, accessible, and practical cooperation opportunities based on local conditions, such as car wash, auto repair and maintenance, mini-marts, financial services, and travel consultancy. Together, we will energize a better life for all.
Sinopec, as I remember, was to enter the Sri Lankan market exactly 20 years ago. In 2003, the government at that time, under the Prime Minister, Ranil Wickremesinghe, invited two companies to take part in the retail operations in Sri Lanka. Unfortunately, after the change of government in 2004, could not take part because of the political changes and the other policy changes that followed after that. That you have managed to sign up more than 145 fuel stations by this morning. 150, I'm sure, will take place in the next couple of days. And also we have given the opportunity for you to start 50 brand new fuel stations also in locations that you may fit the requirement arises. But it is not necessarily restricted to 200 as well. No, it's not restricted to 200. When there are requirements, of course we will open up the door. When the request comes from you, Sinopec, to open more dealerships, we will make sure that we give the approvals for you to continue the business in Sri Lanka.
Meanwhile, Minister Vijay Sekara in another briefing says that it is mandatory to continue cost-reflective pricing mechanisms in the power and energy sector in order to prevent more burden on the public via tax hikes or the implementation of measures such as money printing. He made these comments while addressing a media briefing at the Ministry of Finance today. Concurrently, however, President's Director General of Trade Unions, Saman Ratnapriya, said that the government has not made any plan to restructure the health and education sectors.
ප්‍රධාන බලාපොරොත්තුව තමයි රජය වශයෙන් මේ රාජ්‍ය ආයතන ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගත කිරීමේදී කාර්යක්ෂමතාවය වර්ධනය කිරීම පළවෙනි කාරණා. මූල්‍ය විනය තබා ගැනීමත් ඒ වගේම සිදු කරන සේවය වඩාත් හොඳ සේවයක් බවට පරිවර්තනය කිරීමට අවශ්‍ය වැඩපිළිවෙල සකස් කිරීම තමයි රජයේ ප්‍රධානම මුඛ්‍ය අරමුණ බවට පත් වෙලා තියෙනවා. විදුලි බිල වැඩි කිරීම කියන එක, ඉන්ධන මිල යාවත් කාලීන කළ යුතුයි කියන ඒවා ජනප්‍රිය තීන්දුව නෙවෙයි. ඊළඟ මැතිවරණයේ සමහරට ගෙදර යන්න සිදු වෙන තීන්දුව. නමුත් දීර්ඝ කාලයක් තිස්සේ අපේ රාජ්‍ය ආයතනවල වියදම් නිරූපණය වෙන අයක්‍රමයන් ක්‍රියාත්මක නොවීම නිසා අපි මූල්‍ය අර්බුදයන් වලට ලක් වෙලා තියෙනවා. මහා භාණ්ඩාගාරයේ මැදිහත් වීම ලබා දෙන්නේ සේවය ලබා ගන්න ලබා නොගන්න සියලු දෙනාගෙන් එකතු කරන බදු මුදල් වලින්. ඒ නිසා අපි මේ ක්‍රියාවලිය සිදු කරේ නැත්තම් ඉදිරියටත් සිදු වෙන්නේ එක්ක අපි බදු වැඩි කරන්න වෙනවා. එමත් නැත්තම් මුදල් මුද්‍රණය කරන්න සිදු වෙනවා. එමත් නැත්තම් අපේ තියෙන වත්කම් අපි අලෙවි කරන්න සිද්ධ වෙනවා. එනිසා මේ ක්‍රමවේද වෙනස් කිරීමේදී අපි දැන් යෝජනා කරලා තියෙනවා විදුලි බල මණ්ඩලෙත් අනිත් තෙල් නීතිගත සංස්ථාවෙත් ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගත කිරීම වැඩපිළිවෙල සිදු විය යුතුයි කියන එක.
සෞඛ්‍ය ආයතන ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගත කිරීම කරන්නේ කෙසේද?
සෞඛ්‍ය සහ අධ්‍යාපනය කියන ඒවා මහජන සේවාවන් විදිහට දැනටත් පවත්වාගෙන යන්නේ. ඒවා ඒ ආකාරයෙන්ම පවත්වාගත යුතුයි කියන එක තමයි වර්තමාන ආණ්ඩුවේ සහ ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේ අදහස. මේ දෙකම මේ ලේඛනයේත් නෑ, ඒ පිළිබඳව කිසිදු අදහසක් නෑ.
Sri Lanka's Cabinet of Ministers has granted approval to obtain a $200 million loan from the Asian Development Bank to be repaid in 25 years at a 2% rate of interest. The loan will be allocated to facilitate two sub-programs under the Economic Stabilization and Reform programs. Meanwhile, Cabinet also gave approval to draft a Loan Management Act with the expectation of establishing a state loan management institute with the technical support of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. The Cabinet of Ministers has given the nod to a proposal by President Ranil Wickremesinghe to enter into a loan agreement with the Asian Development Bank to obtain an amount of $200 million. Initial discussions with the Asian Development Bank have been held by the Sri Lankan government to obtain 2 loan facilities, each based on policies to implement 2 sub-programs under the Economic Stabilization and Reform Program. The loan agreement of $200 million will be subject to an annual interest rate of 2% with a repayment period of 25 years, inclusive of a grace period of 5 years in relation to the first sub-program. The Cabinet of Ministers has granted approval to a resolution by the Acting Minister of Finance to direct the legal draftsman to draft the bill of the State Loan Management Act. The decision was first discussed in the Supplementary Budget of 2022, where the importance of the establishment of a State Loan Management Institute as an institutional reform while enhancing loan management and transparency was discussed. This has also been recognized as a prioritized sector under the appropriation loan facility of the International Monetary Fund, and technical assistance has been rendered by the International Monetary Fund and World Bank in order to establish the proposed State Loan Management Institute. The Loan Management Reform Plan, Loan Management Institutional Framework and Legal Framework have been planned as of now. Sri Lanka's Cabinet of Ministers has approved a proposal to amend the Inland Revenue Act to allow tax concessions to registered institutions collaborating with the government to provide health and education services to disabled children. Inland Revenue Act No. 24 of 2017 is to be amended to give tax relief to legitimate charity establishments collaborating with the government health sector and or education system in providing health facilities to children with disabilities and prioritizing the well-being of disabled children. Cabinet of Ministers approved the proposal presented by the Minister of Environment to maintain a country pavilion for the duration of the 28th Conference of the Parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, scheduled to be held in Dubai from the 30th of November to the 12th of December. During the summit, Sri Lanka expects to present a proposal to establish the Climate Justice Forum. During the summit, Sri Lanka aims to raise awareness regarding the aspirations of developing countries, together with countries that are more likely to be at risk due to climate change. State Minister of Finance Ranjit Siambalapitiya said that Cabinet approval has been granted to draft the appropriation bill for the year 2024, adding that the submission of the bill to the Parliament will commence within the first week of October. The Minister further expressed his confidence in approving and finalising the appropriation bill within the course of this year. The Cabinet of Ministers have granted approval to draft the appropriation bill for the 2024 financial year. Speaking to the media, the State Minister of Finance emphasised that the bill for the upcoming year would be submitted to Parliament in the first week of October, following the publication of the appropriation bill in the Government Gazette.
විසර්ජන පනත කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලය අනුමත වෙලා ඊළඟ පියවර තමයි ගැසට් කිරීම සහ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට ඉදිරිපත් කිරීම. ඒක අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා ඔක්තෝබර් මාසයේ මුල සතියේදී ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න. ඒ දෙවන වර කියවීම සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ නොවැම්බර් මාසයේ 13 වෙනිදා. නොවැම්බර් 14 ඉඳලා නොවැම්බර් 21 වෙනකල් සමස්ත අයවැය යෝජනාවලිය පිළිබඳ වූ විවාදය. ඉන්පස්සේ 21 වෙනිදා දෙවන වර කියවීම පිළිබඳ ඡන්ද විමසීමක් කරනවා. ඉන්පසුව නොවැම්බර් 22 සිට තුන් වර කියවීම නැත්නම් කාර්ක සභා අවස්ථාවට අපි කාර්යසටහන හදලා තියෙනවා. දෙසැම්බර් මාසේ 13 විශේෂයෙන්ම අවසාන දවසේ මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශයේ විවාදය තමයි සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ. කාර්ක සභා අවස්ථාව ආරම්භ වෙන්නේ ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේ වැශීෂයෙන්. එදා ඡන්ද විමසීම තමයි අයවැය විවාදය අවසන් වෙන්නේ. වැදගත්ම දේ මේ වර්ෂය තුලම විසර්ජන පනත අනුමත කරලා කතානායකතුමාගේ අත්සනින් නීතියක් බවට පත් කරගන්න ඕනද. අපි සැලසුම් කරලා තියෙන දෙසැම්බර් 27 වෙනකොට සියල්ල ඉවර කරගන්න.
Sri Lanka has awarded a contract to purchase 4 consignments of diesel for the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation during a period of 4 months from November 2023 to February 2024 to Singapore-based MS PetroChina International Limited. The contract was awarded by inviting bids under the long-term contract system, and PetroChina International was selected out of 5 bidders. The awarding of the contract has been approved by the Special Procurement Committee. Meanwhile, the government has decided to purchase 26 floating rubber tubes and other parts required for the anchor buoy used for landing petroleum in the sea near Muthurajavala to the Japan-based Yokohama Industrial Products Asia Pacific Limited. Tenders have been invited for the procurement, and the Technical Evaluation Committee and the Cabinet-appointed Procurement Committee has decided to award the tender to the only bidder. Both decisions received Cabinet approval. Producer and director of Basement Films that produced the expose Sri Lanka's Easter bombings dispatches for the UK's Channel 4, Tom Walker, said that he does not have any proof that any meeting between the former military intelligence chief, Major General Suresh Saleh, and ringleader of the Easter Sunday attacks, Zahran Hashim, actually transpired. He made these comments during an interview in Geneva. On the 5th of September, Channel 4 aired the controversial expose, Sri Lanka's Easter bombings dispatches, in what was slated to be an earth-shattering expose, rendering many high-level political officials exposed to the possibility of collusion between the terrorist cell.
Syed Maulana wants to get asylum, and that's why he is telling this story. Why didn't he tell this story until now, until he left the country? And how do you look at what is your response to these critics?
As far as I'm aware, I wasn't aware that he had direct involvement with Zafran. I was aware of that work that he did. In terms of his direct involvement with Zafran, I can't really give you a good answer as to why Azad Maulana would be the conduit for that meeting, frankly. I don't have any evidence of the fact that Zafran and Sally met prior to that at all. He wouldn't have had direct involvement with Sally during those years. NGJ, from what I understand, again, I will defer to people who know Sri Lanka much better than me, like yourself. But from what I understand, is the NGJ we only became much more active later on in the early 2010s.
Delving into the Earth's core literally, a minor tremor of magnitude 2.4 was reported in the Buttala area last night at about 11:20 p.m., about 1 kilometer deep inside the Earth's core. However, no damages were reported following the tremor caused in the area. Meanwhile, in Teldenia this morning, a 17-year-old boy who had been receiving treatment in the district base hospital Teldenia died after falling off the 6th floor of the building. With that, here's a look at more news across the island in brief. As reported by the Geological Survey and Mines Bureau, a minor tremor with a magnitude of 2.4 was reported in the Buttala area at about 11:20 p.m. yesterday. All 4 seismic stations in the country have recorded the tremor, which had occurred in an area approximately 1 kilometer deep inside the earth. However, there have been no reports of any damages following the tremor. Meanwhile, a teenager who had been receiving treatment in the district base hospital in Teldenia tragically died after falling from the 6th floor of the hospital this morning. The 17-year-old victim had reportedly been suffering from depression. During a search operation executed in the Dematagoda Kaliapullavatta, a suspect along with heroin was apprehended. The Dematagoda police station further revealed that 108 grams of heroin was recovered in the possession of the 22-year-old suspect. In other news, a fire broke out last night at an estate workers' housing line in the Mapagala section of the Badula Tea estate. 9 houses were severely damaged, while 33 people belonging to 10 families were reportedly displaced by the fire. The police suspect that the fire may have begun due to an electrical fault. We'll be back with more news after this short break. Stay tuned.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන් කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ඩීමෝ වෙතින්. වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි. ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ඩීමෝ වෙතින්.
Welcome back. The Sri Lanka Export Development Board confirmed that earnings from merchandise exports increased by 6.98% in August of 2023 compared to July of 2023. Per provisional data released, merchandise exports earnings in August 2023 have surpassed the $1 billion mark, recording a total of $1,091.9 million. However, the Export Development Board also said that this is a decline of 10.91% from a year earlier. Sri Lanka's Export Development Board says that merchandise export earnings in August 2023 recorded a value of $1,091.6 million, which is a 6.98% increase from the previous month. This number, however, is a decline of 10.91% from a year earlier. The decline in merchandise exports is due to the reduced demand shown in export products, especially in apparels and textiles, rubber and rubber-based products, and coconut-based products. For the period January to August 2023, overall merchandise exports decreased by 10.42% to $7,983.13 million compared to the corresponding period in 2022. Further, the EDB mentioned that out of the top 10 export markets, India, Italy, the UAE and France have shown strong performances during the month of August 2023 and the period of January to August 2023 compared to the corresponding period in the previous year. Exports to the USA, Sri Lanka's single largest export destination, decreased 21.29% to $252.13 million in August from a year earlier, and 18.89% to $1,872.7 million in the period of January to August 2023 compared to the same period in 2022. S&P Global Ratings said that Sri Lanka's local currency rating was raised to CCC+/C from SD, selective default, after the completion of a domestic debt restructuring program. The rating agency said that the local currency ratings on Sri Lanka was raised to CCC+/C to reflect a forward-looking opinion about Sri Lanka's creditworthiness on local currency obligations following the completion of the government's debt exchange program with superannuation funds. The agency said that it viewed this exchange as distressed rather than opportunistic due to the government's very high interest burden and local currency debt stock. According to the agency, the restructuring also resulted in lenders receiving less than originally promised. The stable outlook on the long-term local currency rating reflects the balance of improvements to the government's debt profile achieved through its domestic debt restructuring exercise against the continued risk to the government's fiscal sustainability posed by Sri Lanka's ongoing economic external and fiscal pressures. The Colombo Bourse closed higher today following gains in consumer staples and financial stocks. The Colombo Stock Exchange All-Share Price Index closed up 0.28% at 11,248.16 points, while the S&P SL20 was up 0.05% at 3,165.96 points. CT Holdings plc and LOLC Holdings plc were the top gainers on the CSE All-Share, rising 11.15% and 1.2% respectively. Trading volume on the CSE All-Share Index rose to 29.3 million shares from 22.8 million shares in the previous session. Equity market turnover rose to 943 million Sri Lankan rupees from 550 million rupees in the previous session. The capital goods sector was the highest contributor to market turnover, while the banking sector was the second highest contributor. Foreign investors were net buyers, purchasing stocks worth 113.7 million rupees, while domestic investors were net sellers, offloading shares worth 831.1 million rupees. How did the rupee fare against other major currencies in the world? Let's have a look. The Sri Lanka Securities and Exchange Commission has made 4 new appointments at senior level to fulfill its regulatory and developmental mandates. Meanwhile, Deputy Head of Mission of the Embassy of Germany in Sri Lanka, Olaf Malchoas, said reforms must take place in markets and investments, and laws must be enacted to minimize corruption for a sustainable growth path of the country. The Securities and Exchange Commission of Sri Lanka has made 4 new senior appointments to leadership positions to fulfill its regulatory and developmental mandates. These appointments are expected to increase the effectiveness of the SEC Secretariat in its respective operating areas. Accordingly, Manuri Veerasinghe has been appointed Director Corporate Affairs, Madhura P.R. Vanigasekara has been appointed Chief Digital Officer, Shamila Panditharatna has been appointed Assistant Director, Legal and Enforcement, Deputy Solicitor General at the Attorney General's Department Riaz Bari as Director on secondment basis. Deputy Head of Mission of the Embassy of Germany in Sri Lanka, Olaf Malchoas, says reforms must take place in markets and investments, and laws must be brought in to minimize corruption for sustainable growth. Participating at the 24th Annual General Meeting of the Sri Lanka-Germany Business Council, which was held recently, Malchoas, while acknowledging Sri Lanka's efforts and positive results with regards to economic recovery, said that market liberalization, investment promotion, and the implementation of robust anti-corruption measures would create the right conditions to set Sri Lanka more firmly on the path to sustainable growth. The Sri Lanka Convention Bureau has conducted a series of MICE tourism training sessions for regional hoteliers, including Kandy and the South regions, and the latest was conducted in the Cultural Triangle area this month. The aim of these training sessions was to re-establish and enhance the awareness of the importance of Sri Lanka's MICE industry. That's all the news I have for you for this evening. Do join us again tomorrow at the same time for more up-to-date news on Sri Lanka's premier news channel. This is Jonathan Benedict signing off. Have a blessed Wednesday ahead. For now, good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.